Alors, aujourd'hui, on va réviser le subjonctif. On a juste commencé ça un peu en français 3. Donc, il faut parler de comment et quand on utilise le subjonctif. Donc, on va commencer avec les formes. Quelles sont les formes du subjonctif? D'abord, first thing in English, and I had this on your slideshow last year. The subjunctive doesn't mean anything different from the present tense. So you're like, why the heck do we have to use it? There's some expressions in French that require the subjunctive to follow them instead of the regular present tense. So if you say, for example, je veux que, because it's an expression that shows want, the next verb has to be subjunctive. So you say, je veux que tu viennes à la fête. I want you to come to the party. If you put vient in the present tense instead of vienne in the subjunctive, it wouldn't be right. Would people understand you? Yes, of course. But it means something. So it means the same thing. There are a few cases where you're showing a little bit of a difference, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is another example of advanced grammar. So those people in AP throwing in a subjunctive here and there, we'll talk over the year about easy phrases that you can use in every situation to show that you can use subjunctive. So, comment former le subjonctif? Commencez avec la forme il pluriel du présent. Enlevez ENT. Écrivez les terminaisons, oui. ES, IONS, IEZ, ENT. Alors, on va regarder les verbes réguliers. Les verbes réguliers avec ER comme parler. So if we write il parle, take off the ENT, enlever ENT, we've got parle, and we're left with this. Je parle, tu parles, il parle, nous parlions, vous parliez, il parle. So we've got the boot for pronunciation, right? Because remember, ENT is always silent on all your verbs. So you might be thinking, well, how am I going to know if it's the present or the subjunctive? These four look exactly the same as the present. These two look exactly the same as the imparfait. It's context, right? And like I said, the meaning's not really anything different versus present or subjunctive, and you're going to know in context what it is. So, les verbes avec RE. These ones do look different than the present. Je vende, tu vendes, il vend, ils vendent. In present tense, you don't pronounce the D in these three because there's not an E there. And then nous vendions, vous vendiez. Those do look like the imparfait. Les verbes réguliers avec finir. This is where you have to really be careful. This is where it's obvious that it's important that you start with the il plural form. Sometimes people are like, oh, I could just take off the ER here and it works. Yeah, it works here. But if you don't apply the rule to all of them, then you're going to get in trouble when you get something like this, right? Les verbes avec ER, what's the plural stem? Ils finissent. When we take off the ENT, we're left with this. If we had only taken off the IR, we wouldn't have the right stem that is in every form. So je finisse, tu finisses, ils finissent, nous finissions, vous finissiez, ils finissent. You notice they all have the same endings. ES, IONS, IEZ, ENT. Puis, nous avons des verbes irréguliers au présent. Si le verbe est irrégulier au présent, il est irrégulier au subjonctif aussi. Par exemple, le verbe dire. Quelle est la forme il pluriel? Ils disent. Ou connaître. Ils connaissent. Écrire. Ils écrivent. So you've got to know the present tense, right? The il plural form is going to be the stem. Tous les verbes ici ont les mêmes terminaisons que les verbes réguliers. Pardon. So same endings that we just saw, but the stems, again, because they're irregular and present, we have to stick with that same stem we got from there. Puis, il y a des verbes différents avec nous et il au présent. Par exemple, le verbe venir. We're going to break this down in a second. Il y a deux stems. Let's go forward in the slideshow and then we're going to come back here. Au présent, c'est comme ça. Ils, pluriel, viennent, mais nous venons. Parce que ce verbe a deux stems. V-I-E-N-N and V-E-N. Au présent, le verbe a deux stems pour le subjonctif aussi. So, the il plural form is going to be your stem for je, tu, il. See how they all have V-I-E-N-N, like the il here? The nu is going to be your stem for nu and vous. V-E-N, V-E-N. Un autre exemple, boire. Au présent, c'est ils boivent, mais nous buvons. Donc, boivent est le stem pour je, tu, il. Buvent est le stem pour nous et vous. Alors, retournons ici. Tous les verbes ici sont similaires. Ils ont deux stems au présent, alors deux stems au subjonctif. Donc, le premier stem ici, c'est pour je, tu, il. Le deuxième stem ici, c'est pour nous et vous. They also have the same endings, les mêmes terminaisons que les verbes réguliers. Puis, il y a 7 verbes complètement irréguliers. So these are the only 7 that aren't based on the present. Everything we've done so far is based on the present tense. So if you know the present, you can easily transfer it over. These are the ones that are not based on the present. Savoir, faire, pouvoir, aller, vouloir, avoir, être. These first 5 have all the same endings we've been doing. Aller and vouloir have 2 different stems, just like the ones we just looked at. So for je, tu, il, they have this stem. And for nous and vous, they have the second stem. Avoir and être have irregular stems and irregular endings. Des stems irréguliers et des terminaisons irrégulières. On va regarder. Voici les verbes complètement irréguliers. Faire, face. Aller. We said that there were 2 stems. So, j'aille, tu ailles, il aille, nous allions, vous alliez, ils aillent. And think about I. So we got to remember the difference in pronunciation of aller versus avoir that we'll come to in a second. Vouloir also has 2 stems. Je vais, tu veuilles, il veuille, nous voulions, vous vouliez, il veuille. Être. Être and avoir are the only 2 that have irregular stems and irregular endings. So, soit, soyons, soyez, sois. So we've been used to the endings being E, E-S, E, I-O-N-S, I-E-Z, E-N-T. Look at the endings here, S, S, T. E-N-T is the same, and then look here, no I-O-N-S, I-E-Z, just O-N-S, E-Z. Être and avoir are the only 2 verbs that don't have an I in the nous and vous form. And they're the only 2 verbs that have different endings in the other forms. Savoir, sache. Avoir, j'ai, tu es, il est, nous ayons, vous ayez, ils aient. Compare that to aller. I, a. So avoir is pronounced like the present tense with je of avoir. J'ai, so if you can think about that, it transfers over to here. A. And aller is I. Again, irregular endings. E, es, we're expecting, but T is different, and then no I in the nous and vous form. Pouvoir, puisse. So how do we decide if we're going to use the subjunctive? Voici la porte pour entrer au subjonctif. Il faut un verbe spécial, deux clauses. We have 2 separate sections like clauses to the sentence. Deux sujets différents. What's the subject? Je, tu, Sarah, mes amis, mon père. Et le mot que. Que est nécessaire en français pour utiliser le subjonctif. Exemple. So we're going to have 2 parts of the sentence, the main clause, the second part with a que in between to attach them. If that first part's got indicatif, which means, for us right now, it means the present tense normal. It could mean anything that's not subjunctive. It could be futur, imparfait, passé composé. Those could all end up having a subjunctive. But for right now, if I say indicatif ou subjonctif, I mean regular present or subjunctive. Whatever that verb is a special verb conjugated in the present tense, so indicatif. The second part of the sentence, I've got a different subject. So if over here I've conjugated with je, over here I've got tu or Sarah. Je vais utiliser le subjonctif. Par exemple, il faut que mes élèves fassent les devoirs. It is necessary that my students do their homework. If I put font here in the present tense, so people understand? Yes. But il faut is a special verb because we're going to see that it talks about obligation. I've got que. I've got 2 subjects. I've got il and mes élèves. So I need le subjonctif. What are some other expressions that need subjunctive? We started these last year. You weirdo. There's so many expressions that it's too many to list, so it's better if we think about a category. So these are categories to remember. If you can think about, okay, does it fit into one of the you weirdo categories? Subjunctif. If it doesn't, no. And of course, there's some exceptions. Uncertainty, wishes and wants. Emotion, impersonal expressions, requests, doubt, denial, disbelief, and obligation or necessity. Voici des exemples de émotions. Être content, triste, surpris, désolé. Désolé is sorry. Obviously, it's going to be conjugated anyway. Je suis content que, or Sarah est contente que. Désir, this should be wishes. Vouloir, préférer, suggérer, souhaiter, c'est to wish. Aimer, insister, exiger, c'est to require. Demander, défendre. Again, this can be conjugated anyway. Je veux, tu veux, mes amis veulent. Exception, espérer. Yes, it means to hope, but for whatever reason, it doesn't use subjunctive in French. Pas de subjonctif pour espérer. Expression de doute. So this is for uncertainty and doubt. Je doute que, of course. Il est possible que. Je ne suis pas sûr que. Je ne crois pas que. Remember that in French, if you believe something, there's no doubt. So in the grammatical head, usually if I'm thinking in English and I say, I think that, I don't know for sure, so there's a doubt, but not in French. In the grammatical mind, there's no doubt. So if you believe something, you think it, there's no subjunctive. So with croire and penser, also to be sure or certain, je suis sûr, je suis certain. If you've got those in a positive sentence, there's no subjunctive. If you got any of those expressions in the negative or in a question, subjunctif, because now there's a doubt. Voici des exemples d'expressions impersonnelles. They're impersonal because they all start with it is, da, da, da. It is good that, it is important that. It's not he something, I want something, he wants something. It's an expression in general, that's why they're impersonal. Il est bon que, il est important que, il est essentiel que, il est indispensable que. Indispensable means absolutely necessary, right? Il est utile que, useful. Normal que, il est juste que, like fair. Il est dommage que, it's too bad that. Il vaut mieux que, it's better that. Des expressions d'obligation. Il faut que, il ne faut pas que. It's necessary that, it's not necessary that. Il est nécessaire que, il n'est pas nécessaire que. Again, notice every expression we've done has que. And then something that you didn't look at last year were some special conjunctions we're going to add. And we're also going to get a lot better at deciding subjunctive or not. Last year we practiced a lot the forms and we only practiced a little bit deciding, do I need subjunctive or not? So that's going to be more of our focus now after we review the forms. And then we're also going to add these special expressions that don't fit into you weirdo, but they need subjunctive. Pour que, à condition que, à moins que, sans que, avant que, jusqu'à ce que, afin que, bien que, quoique, pourvu que, de façon que, malgré le fait que. And these are more for AP students because you're definitely going to have the possibility of using these more in your writing and everything too. So we're going to see sometimes that obviously if they don't have que, they're not going to use subjunctive. So we might see just pour. Like, j'étudie pour parler bien. I study in order to speak well. There's no que there. I'm the one studying and I'm the one that wants to do better. So I'm not conjugating. J'étudie pour parler bien. I can use the infinitive. J'étudie pour que tu me comprennes. I'm studying so that you understand me. Now I use subjunctive because I have two subjects and a que in the middle. Les conjonctions spéciales. So this is what I was talking about. Subjonctif, when you have deux sujets. Infinitif, when you have un sujet, you can see what the forms turn to. Sometimes, so pour que, when there's only one subject, and you're going to use the infinitive after instead of subjunctive, and the infinitive is when you don't conjugate the verb at all, right? It's just pour. But à condition que changes to à condition de. Je finirai mes devoirs à condition que tu m'aides. Je finirai mes devoirs à condition de comprendre. So, sans que changes to just sans. The other ones have a de. De façon que. When de façon que shows that something has occurred, we're going to use the indicative. When it introduces a goal or a possibility, we're going to use subjonctif. The following are always subjunctive, even if there's only one subject. So that's kind of different. And like I said, these last expressions are more for AP to get a little bit higher up.